Think about the person who irritates you the most right now. Not an enemy, not a stranger. Someone in your life, a colleague, a friend, a family member. The one whose arrogance makes your blood boil. The one whose neediness exhausts you. The one whose dishonesty disgusts you. The one whose loudness makes you want to leave the room. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. What if the thing you hate most about them is something that lives inside you too? Carl Jung called this projection, and he believed it was one of the most powerful and most dangerous forces in human psychology. In this video, you will discover why the traits that trigger you most intensely in other people are almost always a mirror of something you have refused to see in. Number 4 will be the hardest one to accept. Most people stop watching at that point. Don't. Stay until the end, because Jung's final truth about projection might permanently change the way you see yourself and everyone around you. 1. Why we see in others what we cannot see in ourselves. Jung believed that the human psyche is not a single unified thing. It is a collection of parts, some conscious, some not. The parts you are aware of, your values, your identity, your self-image, those live in the light. But the parts that were rejected, suppressed, or never allowed to exist, those live in the shadow. And here is what Jung discovered that changed everything. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you refuse to acknowledge it. It finds another way out. It projects. Like a film projector throwing an image onto a screen, your unconscious takes the parts of yourself you cannot accept and places them onto other people. You don't see your own anger. You see an angry world. You don't see your own dishonesty. You see liars everywhere. You don't see your own need for attention. You see narcissists in every room. Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, not because other people are innocent, but because the intensity of your reaction is the signal. The louder the trigger, the deeper the projection. 2. The difference between a normal reaction and a projection. Not every negative feeling about someone is a projection. Some people are genuinely cruel. Some behaviors are genuinely unacceptable. So how do you know when it is them and when it is you? Jung gave us a clear signal, intensity. A normal reaction is proportional. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You feel briefly irritated. You move on. A projection is disproportionate. Someone mentions they got a promotion, and you feel a rage you can't explain, a resentment that follows you for days, a burning discomfort that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with something buried inside you. If your emotional reaction to another person feels bigger than the situation deserves, that is the shadow speaking. That is the unconscious saying, "Look here, something unfinished lives here." The people who trigger you the most are not your enemies. They are your most uncomfortable teachers. 3. What you hate reveals what you hide. Here is where it gets deeply personal. Think of the trait you find most repulsive in others, the one that makes you judge immediately, the one you have zero tolerance for: arrogance, laziness, neediness, jealousy, selfishness, dishonesty, attention-seeking. Now sit with this question, not whether you have ever acted that way, but whether that impulse, that desire, has ever existed inside you, even for a moment. Jung believed that the things we condemn most harshly in others are often the things we have most aggressively suppressed in ourselves. The person who cannot tolerate arrogance often has buried ambitions they were taught to be ashamed of. The person who despises neediness often has a deep unmet need for connection they learned was unacceptable to show. The person who judges dishonesty most harshly sometimes carries secrets they cannot face in themselves. This is not an accusation. It is an invitation. Because the things you buried didn't die. They went underground, and they come back every time you meet someone who dares to live out loud what you forced yourself to keep silent. 4. The most uncomfortable truth about admiration. Projection doesn't only work with negative traits. Jung discovered something even more unsettling. We also project our unlived potential onto the people we most admire, the person you idealize, the one whose confidence takes your breath away, the one whose creativity makes you feel something between inspiration and pain. That feeling, that specific combination of longing and ache, is not just admiration, it is recognition. It is the part of you that was buried recognizing itself in someone else. The talent they have that moves you so deeply, you have a version of it too. The courage they show that you find so compelling, it exists in you as potential. You were just taught at some point that it wasn't for you, that you weren't allowed, that it was too much, that people like you didn't do things like that, and so you buried it. And now you watch it in others, and you call it admiration, but underneath it, it is grief. Grief for the version of yourself you never let exist. 5. Why projection destroys relationships. This is where Jung's insight becomes urgent, because projection is invisible to the person doing it. You genuinely believe the problem is them. You genuinely believe your partner is controlling. Your friend is selfish. Your colleague is incompetent. And sometimes they are. But when you cannot maintain a single close relationship without eventually seeing that same trait appear, the controlling partner, the selfish friend, the incompetent colleague, the variable is not them. The variable is you. Jung called this the painful but necessary realization that the external world is often a mirror of our internal one, that the patterns in your relationships are maps of your unconscious, that the people you keep attracting, keep fighting with, keep losing, are showing you something about yourself that you have not yet been willing to see. Not because you are broken, but because the unconscious is persistent. It will keep sending the same lesson in different packaging until you finally open it. 6. How to take the projection back. Jung called this process withdrawal of projection, and he believed it was one of the most important acts of psychological maturity a person could perform. Here is how to begin. 1. When someone triggers you intensely, pause before reacting. What specifically is the trait that bothers me? Name it precisely. Not they are annoying, but what exactly about them is annoying. 2. Ask when you suppress that trait in yourself, not whether you have it, but when you learned it was unacceptable. Who taught you that? What happened when you showed it? 3. Reclaim the energy. Every projection is energy you are spending on someone else that belongs to your own inner work. When you withdraw a projection, that energy comes back to you. 4. Stop making other people responsible for your emotional state. When you feel triggered, say to yourself, this feeling belongs to me, not to them. What is it trying to show me? 5. Practice this with admiration too. The next time you feel that specific longing when you watch someone live boldly, ask what part of yourself they are reflecting back. Then ask what would happen if you let that part exist. The final truth. The world is not a collection of people who have the traits you love and hate. The world is a mirror. Carl Jung spent his life trying to show us that the greatest journey is not outward, it is inward. That the enemies you see everywhere are often parts of yourself you haven't met yet. That the heroes you worship are often the unleaved versions of who you could become. And that the moment you stop projecting, the moment you take back everything you have placed onto others, you do not become emptier, you become more whole. Because all of that energy, all of that intensity, all of that fire you have been directing outward, it was always yours. It was always trying to come home. If this video resonated with you, it is probably because somewhere in this you recognize someone. Maybe the person who triggers you. Maybe the person you have been watching from a distance with that specific ache. Don't look away from what you just recognized. It is the most important thing you have seen in a long time. If you want more videos on Carl Jung, shadow work, projection, the unconscious mind, and the hidden psychological forces that shape your relationships and your life, subscribe now, because understanding what you see in others is the beginning of finally understanding yourself.